Violence has always held society by the reins, maintaining control over everyone. Violence has also been very prevalent in American cities since the beginning of time. Dating back to the era of the crucifixion of Jesus and violence of his people, all the way to the civil rights era to present time, violence is still a recurring issue. One specific American city that has gained national attention for its history of violence and current events is Memphis, Tennessee. Usually when people hear the name Memphis, they automatically hold this sense of fear due to the violent events that have occurred in the present times. But the reason why this streak of violence exists is due to the history of violence in Memphis. The history of violence in Memphis has evolved by creating a link between past and present violence in Memphis, shaping Memphis' distinctive identity in a negative way, and providing the drive needed for people to want to make a change with such violence in Memphis. The city of Memphis, Tennessee, has had its fair share of experience with violence. Going back to the Memphis riots of 1866, which was considered the most violent serious event in Memphis that happened between May 1st through the 3rd in 1866, these events were seen as a string of violence that was initiated by political, racial, and social aspects that had taken over following the American Civil War. Some would think in the early stages of the Reconstruction period. The first violent event that set the riots into motion was the shooting altercation between African American war veterans and Caucasian police officers. Groups of white residents and police officers stormed through black neighborhoods and the houses of black men who were free and started to attack, sexually assault, and murder African Americans. These specific riots were later called the Memphis Massacre of 1866. These specific events that occurred over a span of these days shaped the Constitution. With the events that happened in 1866, they later structured the 14th Amendment that goes into detail about the aspects of citizenship and the rights of the people of the United States. This is just one of the many situations of violence foreseen in the past. Fast forward to the 21st century of Memphis, violence has done nothing but progress. According to crime ranking databases in 2005, Memphis held the 4th ranking spot for most dangerous city. Transitioning to 2006, Memphis then held the very top rank of the number of violence that has been reported that year. The history of violence that has taken place in the city of Memphis has shaped Memphis's identity in a negative way. Ever since 1866, when searching the word violence, people tend to associate the city of Memphis, and this is because the first piece of information that comes up is the Memphis riots. This in itself is the start of a negative light being shed on Memphis. On May 15, 1924, statistician Frederick C. Hoffman declared Memphis, Tennessee the most murderous civilized city in the world. When skipped forward to the records, Memphis upholds in the 21st century of being the most violent city in the United States, then it is known that this has had a hand to play with how the world sees the city of Memphis. When talking to residents of the city of Memphis, some only talk about the violence. When talking to people who just know of the city, they would talk about the same thing. This specific image of Memphis has affected the amount of people who would like to move to Memphis for jobs, living, college, and any other aspect of life. No one would want to reside in a city that upholds a negative name because of the violence that has taken place. Since Memphis houses several different colleges like the University of Memphis, Christian Brothers University, Rhodes College, and Baptist College, a negative image of the city can only hurt the number of recruits that could possibly enroll into those colleges. Imagine being a parent of a first-time college student, sending away a child to school that is not in their hometown that he or she was raised in, but in a city that held the rank for the most violent city in the United States. Seeing that there are multiple colleges in this city and they make up a grand number of the residents that occupy Memphis, if people repel to come here on the basis the city is dangerous, then this can affect the number of residents in Memphis. Some people have become so scared of the name and the fame that Memphis has brought for itself that they have moved out of the city and found other places to live. With a name of violence for itself and an image that has been negative for decades, the city of Memphis has been in a standstill for progress. The history of violence in Memphis has evolved by providing the drive needed for people to want to make a change with such rate. With a negative image of the city, people start to feel a sense of remorse and want to find ways to help and alter how the people of Memphis and others on the outside looking in see the city. Seeing as the city has so much potential and has so much life to offer its residents, individuals catch on to the potential that Memphis holds and wants to uphold this, especially if the person was born and raised here. Then the drive for change is very present. People tend to make changes to things that they see have a lot going for itself. Even though there are so many things that remain at a standstill for Memphis, there have been a lot of things that have changed due to the people who have taken chances at developing the city. For example, it has brought up the evolution of downtown Memphis that houses the infamous Beale Street, this being a popular tourist attraction for the city. No one thinks about the violence or the history of violence that has taken place in Memphis when they are walking around, enjoying good food, and listening to blues. With the changes that has happened in Memphis, causing an evolution of a name for violence, Memphis holds ties to its past. Considering the history of violence in the city of Memphis, this has created an everlasting link between the past and present. This history of violence from the past can be connected to the present-day Memphis. Even though the violence today is not strictly racially motivated, some of the residents of the past still hold suit today. Violence is not something that just dies out. It often streams some effect to how the world moves today, and this is the case for the city of Memphis. Seeing that a horrific event like the Memphis riots, or what was known as the Memphis Massacre of 1866, happened, this will follow around the city forever. This sometimes gives ideas to future events, being the muse for other situations to happen. Violence has hovered over American cities since the beginning of time. Going back to a time where violence made decisions and ways of life for people, it is still alive today. People hear things about Memphis and automatically assume the worst, and this stems from the history of violence. With this being said, the history of violence in Memphis has evolved the city.